Hi, everybody. A little while ago, I ran a video on YouTube that showed how you could deploy a Red Hat OpenShift single node cluster inside of Hyper-V running on Windows 10 for the purposes of running a lab. It didn't necessarily have all of the production bells and whistles, but it was very, very suitable for learning how to use Red Hat OpenShift. A comment that came out of that was that is it possible to do the same thing but using VMware Workstation instead of Hyper-V? The answer is yes, and that is the purpose of this video. I will demonstrate how to set up a Red Hat OpenShift cluster inside of VMware Workstation. There are some caveats, and I'll run through them quickly. And also, the VM requirements are fairly similar to what they are in Hyper-V, just a couple of changes. Onto the VM requirements. I have it listed here with 16 vCPUs. The requirements to run OpenShift on a class nodes are 8 vCPUs normally. However, I found that with the Hyper-V version as well, when I tried to deploy a virtual machine with less than 16 vCPUs, it said it was insufficient. And regarding memory, it is advisable to have more than 32 gig to run this. I understand that having massive amounts of memory in home desktops is not always available, but the more the merrier, I think. VMware Workstation does allow you to swap memory for hard drive, swap space if necessary, but that does degrade performance. The next part, the node requires internet access at boot time. I've got mine set to run in a LAN segment in VMware Workstation that has a NAT, so it goes out to the internet via the NAT. If you have other methods on your home, as long as internet access is available to the virtual machine, you shouldn't have a problem. To act as a persistent volume storage, I am not actually going to make use of that disk, but when I go through and build the virtual machine, I will provision it. It'll just be there for when I do my next piece of work, which is when I'm focusing on provisioning virtual machines and backing them up. And the last one the last one is crucial. Nested virtualization feature must be enabled for the virtual machine that you create in VMware Workstation. The nested virtualization requires two elements. It requires the BIOS to allow it, and then it requires it to be configured on the virtual machine. In the case of VMware Workstation, as I said, the third requirement is that the Hyper-V use of that nested virtualization, which is how it operates Windows subsystem for Linux, it needs to be disabled. And this is where we're talking about those specific things. It must be disabled. It prevents, like, disabling it means things like Windows subsystem for Linux and Windows subsystem for Android if they're installed will not work. You might get warning prompts from them that not available. It also prevents things like Hyper-V from running nested virtualization. So you can't run Hyper-V VMs with nested virtualization and run VMware Workstation VMs with nested virtualization at the same time. Disabling it is done through BCD edit. It's pretty, in my view, straightforward command. BCD edit, set hypervisor launch type off. And if you want to turn it back on, just change off on. So BCD edit, set hypervisor launch type on. Each change requires a reboot to take effect. If you don't do it and you try to launch a virtual machine in VMware Workstation with nested virtualization enabled, it'll tell you virtualization is not available. And you can launch the VM, but it won't be able to do the nested virtualization, which means you won't be able to install OpenShift on it. Okay, and with that said, let's switch over to the lab. If you saw the first video I did, you would know this is the Red Hat hybrid console. This console.redhat.com. If you have a Red Hat ID and evaluation license for OpenShift, which you can get from redhat.com, you will be able to access this. You'll see it controls multiple services, including Red Hat Enterprise Linux, OpenShift, and Ansible. We're focused on OpenShift. We're going to click into the OpenShift part right now. And then once you're in there, you see you've got your cluster list. There's no cluster currently. We want to use the assisted installer cluster. So we're going to go in there and click create. Give your cluster a name. It all has to be lowercase. It's area I keep messing up. And then give it a domain. I'll just use my personal domain. Version and type. The important thing is you tick on single node cluster that you need to. That is what we're trying to achieve. Click next. I want virtualization on, and you'll see that also enables the logical volume storage. Click next. Now we get to the part where we're setting up our host. You've got the three different discovery disk types. I've chosen the minimal installation image for this boot. It's a smaller footprint, but it does require downloading of the installation data on the first boot, which adds times installation time. The next part is we have the SSH public key. If you have a Linux machine, you can use SSH keygen to generate a public-private key pair. I'm using Windows, so I'll just use PuTTyGen. I've created a private key and a public key. And what we need to do is we just paste the public key part into this. This is for access to the host afterwards. It's not like authenticated using public key encryption. So if you need to get onto the host from the console, you would during the boot process or during the install process, you would need the key. You can add the public key in one of two ways. You can browse for the file if you know where the public key file is stored, or you can just copy it to the clipboard and paste it in. If you use PuTTyGen, you generally just need to copy what's on the public key display after you generate the key and paste that into here, which is exactly what I'm doing right now. Right, you click generate discovery DVD. Click generate discovery ISO, and then that will download the image file. As you can see, it takes some time. I'll just pause the video until it's finished. And that is done. The ISO has been downloaded, so now we just have to pop over into VMware Workstation and we can start creating our virtual machine. So in my VMware Workstation lab, let's go to New, Virtual Machine. Typical is fine. Just browse to where Discovery ISO is. There it is. Click Open. Click Next. You can see lots of different types for Linux. Generally speaking, for this purpose, Red Hat 9 is good. Give your machine a name and location, create the boot disk storage, and then you have to customize the hardware here. As I said, you give it 32 gig of memory, 16 vCPUs, however you want to divide that. I've just gone with 4 processors, each with 4 cores. And then you got to tick on that virtualization. That's the important part here. We just finished with the initial creation. Go and close and then finish. Before you boot up, you can if you want to add another disk, this is how you do it before you boot up. You go back into the settings and where's settings down there? Go back in, click add hardware, uh, and then you can add a hard disk. You can't add a second hard disk during the creation process. You need to do it after. Give it a size, type, look, and that's it. And then go in and then start the machine. Once you start the machine, that's really all you really need to do. But before we boot in, I'll just show you the command. I've already done it on this workstation, so I don't have to do it again. Yes, I run that command before, and then I rebooted before I started creating the video. If I didn't, and I tried to boot the machine, I would get a warning at this stage. But I haven't. The machine's starting to boot. And that's all we really need to do here. We just jump back into the hybrid cloud console at Red Hat and wait for the machine to show up in the discovery. This will take some time, so I'll stop the video until it's there. But what you're expecting is once the machine's booted up off the discovery ISO, it'll connect to the network, it'll download some stuff, and it will then prepare itself. So you'll see the IP or the host name show up here, and then once it's there, we can move on to the next part. You should see it in a state of ready. If you're not seeing it after a while, go back to the VM and check for some issues. The main one you'd expect would be if there's actually not internet access. If you get an error saying you can't connect and things like that, or can't resolve API.openshift, redhat.com, that would be a key indication that the network is not correct. You can change that on the virtual machine and then reboot, and you should hopefully see success. And because I'm using a minimal ISO in this instance, it is at this stage it's downloading the image off the internet. If I used a full discovery ISO, it wouldn't have to do this, and that's hence the full discovery ISO is generally faster. So I've sped through that process and gone back to the console, so the discovery ISO has booted. So we should hopefully see it pop up very, very soon uh, with with the details. And there it is. You can see it's got an item for host name type. It's discovering at the moment, and now it's showing ready, which means everything is good. The amount of CPU and memory is. Before you start and go next, you can give it change the host name, which is what I'm going to do, just to match what I've called it, ocp4.lelab.cloud, and then once I've done that, I'll just go in and start the process by clicking next. You can see the storage. That's important. It shows which disk is being formatted, which will serve as the boot disk. It'll also provide some warning saying the installation process doesn't format non-install disks. As I said earlier, I'll do that later when I'm ready to use it. So everything looks good here. So just click next. Then here we are in the network. It picks up the IP network from the machine network from the VLAN I've installed the host in. You can, if you want to, choose advanced networking where you can change the cluster networks and service siders. I'm not going to do that, so I'll just leave that unticked. You'll see it initially says insufficient. It takes a little bit of time for it to discover the network is okay. Once it's validated that, the status will change to ready, and then we move forward. And there it is, ready. On to the next and final step. And there we have it. Click install. and that's it. It'll take a varying amount of time. It'll be dependent on various factors such as networking, storage, compute performance of the machine, my desktop, as well as the virtual machine resource allocation. The whole process will take time, so I'm just going to speed through it. Yes, you won't see the whole thing in real time. It can take a varying amount of time, for up to 20 minutes to up to an hour or more, and that can be a little bit tedious. So you'll just see it skip to each step fairly rapidly. There's 7 steps in total, in which case after which it'll finalize and then it will be ready to go. And we're done. You see the status has changed to install. You'll see that there is a username and password accessible, as well as links to your cluster's console. Before you can click on those links, we need to make sure those DNS or hostname entries are available. You need to, like OpenShift is quite particular about its DNS entries. So what we'll do is we'll click on the section which says not able to access your cluster. That'll pop up with DNS configuration available. If you have a DNS server that you can use, just pop those DNS entries in, the ones that are on screen. I don't in my lab purpose, so I'll use the Windows host file. So what I need to do is I need to go into the Windows host file and click and open it. You would need to open it as an administrator, so I'll just open an administrative PowerShell window and then the browse to the folder that it's in, which is C Windows System 32 drivers etc. Link, and it'll open for me. Once that is done, I'll just paste these entries into that file and save it, and that will allow the cluster DNS to resolve on my machine. And once that's all done, then you can click on the launch button down here and actually launch a cluster. You will get the certificate warnings. You'll get 2 of them. Do not be concerned. It's a brand new cluster. You click acknowledge and the first time, and then you'll get it again. And the same goes. Click advance, then you just proceed, and you will end up at the login page. Back on the cluster page, we then need to go and fetch those default kube admin credentials. So just click close here, and you'll see the kube admin username and password there. Just click copy the password and go back to your cluster. Username is kubeadmin, and the password is whatever the password is. Click login, and after waiting a little bit of time, my computer's been overloaded. But once you get in, you'll see the control plane for OpenShift. You'll see the virtualization there. That means the virtualization operator has been installed. It does give you the option to create virtual machines, use the catalogs and templates and so forth that are available, and otherwise anything else you need to do. That's pretty much where we're going to leave this video. Hope you enjoyed it, and if you want to see more, just like, share, subscribe, leave feedback and questions in the comments. I'm more than happy to keep engaging on OpenShift.